Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and this is the High School English Hub. This is where high school students and teachers go to get all things relating to high school English.
Mr. Giles, today we want to talk about non-literary text, and we want to look at political cartoons. We want to help students learn to read, analyze, interpret, write, and really speak in an academic way about this interesting text type.
Yeah.
Mr. Giles, we have an acronym.
We do have an acronym to tackle these one-panel cartoons that really pack a lot of detail in them. Here is our acronym to help us deconstruct cartoons. Coral needs our care and love.
Coral needs our care and love. We are in Thailand. Of course, we care about coral and the environment. Mr. Giles, what's the C for coral stand for?
The C stands for composition. Composition means the arrangement of visual elements. So we're thinking about how this entire cartoon is composed. We're thinking about what's in the foreground, what's in the background, what's in the left side of the panel, the right side of the panel. And we're really being able to talk about it holistically. That's our first entry point.
That's great. The N stands for narrative. We want to treat this political cartoon like a story. What is the setting? Who are the characters? What's the inciting incident that starts the action of the cartoon? What are the conflicts? Perhaps there's a resolution. How does this cartoon actually create a story? This is one panel to a much larger story. We want to think about that story when we talk about cartoons.
Yeah. The O stands for objects, okay? And with objects, we're thinking about specific objects that have symbolic weight. So we're thinking about objects and how they symbolize different concepts and ideas that relate to the global issue or the current event that the cartoon is about.
Nice. Also, we want to think about color and shading. Of course, you might have pastel colors. You might have bold primary colors. You might be in black and white. We want to think about where is the graphic weight, Mr. Giles, and how is the cartoonist pulling our attention, pulling us along a focal pathway, and sort of guiding us through the cartoon with color.
Yeah, the L stands for language, and while there's not a ton of language in most one-panel cartoons, we want to think about the punchline. We want to think about the use of irony, the labels, the speech bubbles, all those elements of language to be able to unpack and talk about.
I think the best way to move forward, Mr. Giles, is to apply this acronym to an actual political cartoon and deconstruct this. As you can see, we are looking at Climate Summit in Dubai, published in November 26, 2023 by Patrick Chapat. Patrick Chapat is a Swiss cartoonist, publishes in a wide range of publications, and he's pretty critical about man's impact on the environment, Mr. Giles. Can you give us just a little summary, a little bit of context for this cartoon, and then we'll break it down?
Yeah, the COP28 is a United Nations conference where countries have gotten together to have a summit about climate change, and it took place in Dubai. And Patrick Chapat is kind of showing some inherent criticism of what's happening and some of the hypocrisy of actually holding a climate change summit in a petrostate that's actually, contributing to some of the climate change situation.
Yeah, a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of irony there. Let's go ahead and apply our acronym. Coral needs our care and love. With respect to the composition, what can we say, Mr. Giles?
Well, first of all, in the foreground, we see this polar bear that's sort of been enshrined in this sort of imitation snow globe as he's standing on the melting ice cap. That's drawing our attention right away. Also, to the right of the panel, we see the family that's gazing at the polar bear that's on display. And in the background, we see kind of an interesting sort of artificial imitations recreation of Venice that's in the background that's drawing my attention. And lastly, we see that the entire setting of this cartoon is indoors in an enclosed space, which makes us think about the amount of incredible energy to air condition this space.
Sure. We also notice sort of the size of the polar bear is much larger than the family, right? So he's playing with size and scale as well.
I like that.
Yeah,
Good
really interesting composition. The need, of course, we want to think about the narrative. In this case, we have a couple of characters. I think maybe the polar bear could be perceived as the protagonist, and the family is there as well. So those are our characters. I think the inciting incident, what started the action of the story, is the polar bear's natural habitat is melting, Mr. Giles, and they've had to bring this polar bear inside this sort of pseudo snow globe in the middle of the Middle East in the United Arab Emirates. So that's kind of the story. The conflict is the polar bear is stuck inside this little false environment, and his environment is diminishing even further.
Yeah, he looks forlorn. We almost see a tear dropping from his eye. There's a lot going on there, a lot of emotion. And then that's juxtaposed with the emotions of the family that's like gazing in amusement, as the kids are like shouting and raising their arms. And the wife is kind of looking at the camera, and then she's kind of looking with this sort of puzzled expression. I think that's interesting to talk about. So there's a lot of characters that are at play.
Well, the wife's interesting because we can talk about objects next. Obviously, we want to look for those objects and think about the symbolic weight. What objects do you see her carrying, Mr. Giles?
She's carrying a shopping bag, and this might make me think a little bit about the fact that, we have consumerism all over the world, this rapid consumption. We know that this is contributing to climate change. It's making us think about that. We see a shopping mall in the background. Of course, Dubai is known for consumption and shopping. So maybe he's making us think a little bit about that.
Yeah. One more object I'd like to talk about is that sign in the back, the label. It says ski indoors, right? Just the words ski indoors are so unnatural together, right? Again, just sort of playing on that again, the energy consumption. What does it take to produce snow inside in the middle of the desert? Again, it's a really scathing commentary from Shappat that this is taking place in Dubai, this climate conference, in a place that's using tons of energy.
The melting iceberg has to be mentioned too symbolically. That symbolizes the sort of climate change crisis. Lastly, we also, not only objects, we're thinking about color. And I think the color of the cartoon is worth talking about. We see that dominant blue that's reminding us about the oceans and the significance of how the ocean contributes to climate.
Also, guys,
the ocean's in crisis.
The ocean's in crisis, and blue is sort of a cold color. It really creates that solemn mood that I think Shappat wants us to have, and that matches that sort of tear dropping off the polar bear's face, right? So the cold color does reinforce the mood. Yeah. What else can we say about the pastel colors in the background?
Yeah, the pastel colors in the background represent that sort of artificial city of Venice that's been created, and that's kind of in contrast to some of the other things that we see. And all of that is that also in the sky, we see that yellow. We're expecting blue in the sky, but the yellow just reminds us that this is all indoors. So that's what Shappat's way of kind of creating that color palette.
Now, lastly, with language, we don't have many words on the page, but we do need to talk about those and see if we can make an interpretation. I think the word attraction is very interesting to me. The connotation of attraction is something that we want to see, we want to attend, we want to participate in. But the sad irony is that the polar bear is not meant to be an attraction. The polar bear is a majestic animal that's meant to be outside. He's not meant to be inside this tiny snow globe. So the irony and the hypocrisy of the word attraction really stands out.
Yeah. I also think cartoonists need to label things. So labeling COP28 Dubai kind of reminds us this is anchored in a moment in time. This is like a time capsule from November 2023. And those labels of, like you said, the sign of ski indoors and shopping, those help kind of orient the viewer and the reader.
Yeah, folks, I think in the end, what we wanted to show you is that by using the simple acronym, Coral Needs Our Care and Love, we can apply this to rich analysis and interpretation of political cartoons. You go ahead and give this a try. There's a graphic organizer in the video description, and come on back for the next video, and we'll look at a piece of writing for this cartoon. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Klaus.